Good morning. Well, we live in a country which is famous for its water resources. Canada, as a country as a whole, is famous for having 20% of the world's water resources, fresh water resources. It's a country which prides itself on the scintillating pure water. So much so that one of the largest provinces, Ontario, is named as a land of the shining water. Ontario means land of the shining water. But imagine, that reputation is at stake today. The reputation of clean, healthy, life-giving water is no longer valid. While its validity is being questioned today, tomorrow it might be called the land of the most polluted water in the world. In 2012, the then Prime Minister realized that the danger of pollution is increasing, and he implemented and ordered certain regulations. Unfortunately, they have not been implemented today. Now imagine, there are 82,255, I again repeat, 82,255 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And last year, the untreated wastewater containing raw sewage joined the oceans and the rivers of Canada, this size, and it was all polluted. This is an increase of 1.9% as compared to 2014, so about 2% increase every year. Are you shocked that every year 205 billion liters of raw sewage and untreated wastewater is joining the Canadian rivers and the oceans? You know, the small town, the beaches are a testimony to that. In Newfoundland and Labrador, the beaches are full of toilet paper washes. In Victoria, BC, the divers report that the sewage discharge pipes are clogged with polluted scallops and sick kelp. And I said, imagination staggers. 82,255 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of untreated, dirty sewage water flowing in our oceans and in our rivers. And these are the rivers on which we pride ourselves. I remember whenever some people visited my place, I would take them to the Credit River to show how clean the water is. And now if I have to go there and show it to them, they will say that possibly the waters in Rhine and Seine are much more cleaner, and in a few days, a few months, the water will be cleaner, if not as clean as Credit River and Humber River. As I told you that 2012, the Harper government ordered some regulations, but they have been observed in their non-observance. The typical lethargy, the typical carelessness and apathy. You know, everybody talks about pollution. Everybody talks of the global warming, which is a hoax. But when the real issue is there, they either go mum or they go blind. And that is what's happening to that. Till today, the cities, the municipalities and the towns have failed to comply with the standards that the Conservative government had adopted 4 years back. And this is the report of CBC, which was not a lover of the conservative government. CBC is as pro-liberal as a CNN in US would be. The rules adopted by Harper government require that the municipalities must undertake secondary treatment to remove not only solid waste, that can be done by simple process of filtration, but it is also their responsibility to ensure that the dissolved organic material is removed before it's discharged into rivers and oceans. And it was also ordered that the municipalities had to comply with it, and they must do it as soon as possible. And unfortunately, not a single municipality has come up with foolproof schemes to implement the regulations. Some examples are there, but the schemes are not 100% compliant with the regulations. The figures obtained and given by the Environment Canada show that there was a marginal improvement in 2013 and 2014. But 2015, the amount of untreated wastewater actually increased. So this is shocking, that initially, the regulations had a positive effect, though there was a marginal benefit, but it reverted back and carelessness came back with the vengeance. When Federal Environment Minister Catherine McKenna was called, and she said very clearly, I'm a swimmer, and my own experience is that swimming is hazardous in the lakes and the rivers today. And then, the joke is that the federal government has allocated $2 billion for the wastewater upgrades. $2 billion looks to be a huge sum. But the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities says there's $2 billion a drop in a bucket. $2 billion would have been okay if the process had started about 10 years back. Today, the minimum requirement is $18 billion. And that's the minimum requirement. But the government will spend $18 billion in foreign aid and in sponsoring refugees. It will waste billions of dollars in welfare funds which are misused. It would waste millions of dollars in interpreting and translation services which should not be there because everybody is supposed to know English and French. But $18 billion it will not spend for the health of the people and for maintaining the purity of its water resources. And we are well aware that water today is the most scarce resource in the world. Most scarce resource. And as somebody said, that this resource might be the cause of the Third World War. The mayor of a Labrador city says that in his small town of 500,000 people, the estimate to upgrade the facilities is $500 million. So how does the government feel that $2 billion would be sufficient? If a small town of 500,000 people needs $500 million, that means 4 small cities. That means, in other words, 2 large cities would be using $2 billion, and that is sufficient. Now, you can well nigh question, how does water get polluted? It takes essentially 2 forms. First is that the sewage is pumped directly into the waterways without cleaning, and that's the worst thing. The second is that the old system, when the sewer line and the sanitary line were not separate, so they mix each other in the time of storm and carry that. Whenever there is a rapidly melting snow, when there is a storm, it happens because the system releases the untreated water into the waterways. And if they don't release, it will back up into your homes. So that has got to be released. The need is to ensure that the sewer line and the storm drain, they are separate. You cannot combine the two. It is like saying that the arteries and the veins should be joined together. We forget that their functions are different, that the water flowing through them is different. So that should not be done. But whatever the reason, and we know the reason, the point is that the municipalities are failing under the plea that they do not have money. The provinces are failing. Again, the plea they take is they do not have the money for this. All of them have money to waste. All of them. The junkets undertaken by the mayors, if they do not take junkets for 10 years, the money would be there for the city, enough. So why cannot government ban the junkets? Now the junkets are trade missions. Now trade missions are carried out by the federal government and the provincial government. Where's the need for the municipalities to do it? I know Mississauga municipality, for example, had trade missions 4 times in a year. Whenever they want to gallivant around, loiter around, they take the plea of trade mission, spend the public funds for their own satisfaction. And till today, not a single trade mission has been successful in bringing any business to the cities. When they go, their talks are at a very mundane level. More often than not, it is just sightseeing and tourism for themselves. This wastage of funds has got to be there. The salary increase must be stopped. As a matter of fact, there should be immediate cut in the salaries of all politicians, whether they are the councillors, mayors, MPPs, or MPs. Let there be a 25% cut in their salaries. The result would be that only those people will take up the job who are really interested in working for the people. Reduce our salaries to the bare minimum. Let them be paid the minimum wage only for the hours that they work, not for the month. They work for hardly 5 months in a year, if they work at all. So let them be paid the minimum wage. And the money saved in 1 year would be more than sufficient to undertake all the 500 projects which are required today. As McKenna says, that they need today 500 projects in the first phase. So 500 projects can be financed by salary reduction and reducing it to minimum wage and no perks extra, except the actual traveling and other things. Once that is done, it will weed out the avaricious, the greedy politicians who profess to serve the people but they do not. Secondly, it will give you the money for much needed development of the country and for providing clean, healthy water, and then also for ensuring that our rivers and our oceans and our lakes retain their pristine beauty. Is it asking too much? But I can assure you nobody will do it, because all of them want to feather their own nests. You would hardly find people like Kennedy and now Trump who say they will not take any salary. There was one finance minister in India, Deshmukh, who refused to accept any salary. These examples are very few and far between. All are anxious to grab as much of the public fund as they possibly can. And therein lies the tragedy of the nation. I once again repeat, the will is not there, the desire is not there, for all their talk is for show. If they are really interested, it's not difficult to do it. The question arises, are they interested? Do they have desire to do so? If they really have a desire to do so, they would do so. I remember from my own experience, I was CEO of a company in Himachal. And I ordered, say what they used to do is the salary of the labor was never paid in time. I called the accounts guy and told him, look here, I want one thing first, pay the labor all these wages and stop making the payment to the chairman, to the CEO, that's myself, and to the managers. And their 1 month salary was equal to 3 months salary of the labor, 700 of them. I said, their need is more. We can live without that. And would you believe, that very labor became more productive. While they were making 5,000 watches before I joined, now without any addition of any extra machine, they were making 50,000 watches. That's the way you prompt more productivity. Look after the people. Here we are not doing it, and the politicians are not doing it. Today the need is a crying need to protect our waters, to retain that their pristine beauty and their health. Healthy water means healthy nation. And the sewage water means sickly, debilitated, weakened nation. Make a choice, make it now.